Hello and welcome. This is Wylker, and today I'm going to be taking a look at a mod called Applied Energistics. And this is a mod that somehow has been flying a little bit below the radar, and it involves a ton of really cool stuff. Everything from basic to really advanced machines. Um, so without too much of an introduction, I'm just going to go into kind of what this mod does so you can see all the different really neat blocks and items and stuff that it adds. Again, this is Applied Energistics, and there'll be a link down in the description of the video for the wiki, and I think they have a Minecraft forums post too. But the first thing we're going to look at is some of the world gen, and you see it does add a new ore to the world called quartz. And before you kind of roll your eyes, you're like, wow, do we really need another ore? It's really well done. It's at the same time kind of a minimalistic thing, but also adds a lot of functionality and some really neat stuff to the mod as far as different tech levels and stuff. And it looks like this. Here, let me go back into survival mode here for a second. And when you break it, you see you get both a quartz crystal and quartz dust. Okay, and the quartz dust does not necessarily spawn every time. So I broke 3 ore blocks and got 3 crystals and 2 dusts. So with the crystals, you can make all of your regular type of tools, and these have the strength and durability of iron. So there's, the sword, the axe, the pickaxe, the hoe, the shovel, and then the first new item we see here is called the quartz wrench. And oh, I forgot to put it in my crafting table, but that's okay. It's made really simply with 5 quartz and a big X pattern like that, and you get a quartz wrench out of it. The next new item we're going to look at is called the quartz cutting knife. And the cutting knife is made with 2 sticks, 2 quartz, and an iron ingot. And those tools are going to be useful for several of the mod functions that we're going to look at here in just a minute. The wrench is really specifically for rotating mod blocks, and the knife's going to be used in a couple recipes that we're going to look at here in just a minute. So one of the really cool first early game items that Applied Energistics adds is that little neat block we were just looking at, and it is called a quartz grindstone. And it's actually a multi-block structure, so the first part of it is this grindstone. It's made with a Buildcraft gear. Now, if you don't have Buildcraft installed, there are alternate recipes for a lot of these items, but I'm just going to go over the Buildcraft recipes. If you don't have Buildcraft, you can look it up on your own later. So the quartz grindstone is made here with a wood gear and 3 smooth stone, 3 of those quartz dust, which we just saw, and some cobble. And then the second part of it is this wooden crank, and the wooden crank is made with 5 sticks in a real simple L-shaped pattern there. So what does this do, Wylker, you may be asking? Well, I'll show you, faithful YouTube viewer. So let's say I had a stack of iron ore that I just dug up, and I don't have my power yet, I don't have my thermal expansion stuff going yet, I don't have IC2 going yet, I don't have Factorization's crazy system on my server yet, so I can take this iron ore, and just so you know, you lay these down separately. So you lay down the quartz grind to stone, and then you lay down the crank on top of it, and it combines into this little multi-block. And you'll see it shows my input up here. There's kind of a processing box here in the middle, and then an output box down here at the bottom. And what happens is, notice the first time I spin that crank, it moves one of my ore into this processing box, and it takes a total of 8 turns. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Alright, and that turns your ore into 2 dust. Pretty fantastic. It is a very low-tech version of a macerator or a pulverizer that gives you increased ore production for the benefit of, or for the cost of your time, which is, again, just turning and clicking the crank. 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Ta-da! Cool. So a really neat, simple, low-tech solution to early game ore production. You can then take your ore, your dust, just like you would from any other mod, and bring it over here and smelt it. Real simple. Okay? The next thing I want to show you is some of the core items that you're going to need for building stuff later in this mod. And they're the basic and the advanced processor. And they're made really simply. They're used by combining the knife with the basic processor is a gold, 2 redstone, and a silicone. And a silicone is made simply by cooking your quartz dust. So in a furnace or a powered furnace or wherever, if you cook your quartz dust, you end up with silicone. Real simple and easy. Once you have your silicone, you can use the cutting knife recipes, and the tools are maintained in the recipe. So if you were to make this advanced processor assembly, you just take damage to your cutting knife and that's it. So those are all the basic tools and two of the basic component items. And there's two advanced tools. The vibration catalyst. Oh, I did not put recipes in there for these. Wow, I'm slacking today. So the vibration catalyst is made with a bucket of lava, 2 quartz crystals, a conversion matrix, and an iron ingot. Okay, and the conversion matrix is made with one of those processors we just looked at, along with some iron and quartz and redstone. And then the entropy accelerator is kind of its opposite. And the entropy accelerator is made with a conversion matrix, 2 quartz, and ice, and an iron ingot. So they're basically the same recipe. One takes ice and one takes lava. And these do have energy requirements. You see in this case they're listed with EU. I assume if you don't have IC2 installed that they'll work with different power sources, but I haven't tested that yet. But anyway, I want to show you how these two things work. So the vibration catalyst is designed to superheat things and turn them into smelted products right out of the world. So I'm going to right click on this iron ore and you see, ta-da, I get iron ingots. Very cool. And then the entropy accelerator cools things. So for example, I can take lava and turn it into obsidian. So just two cool, neat little items involving changing the temperature of what things are operating at. Now we're going to get into kind of the meat of this mod as far as the tech tree goes. And this whole system you see set up here is one of the coolest item and auto crafting systems I've seen in a long time. It reminds me a little bit of logistics pipes mixed with some of the factorization stuff, like as far as how the plans and stuff work in that mod. It's just really neat. And all these blocks are called Emmy somethings. So here I'm going to turn back on Creative Plus mode because I got all the blocks stored up here. I got some viewer feedback about not spending as much time on recipes as I have in the past. So I've kind of not, you see, I had an area set up there where I was going to do my normal kind of project table thing. And I decided to not do that in the interest of trying to keep this moving a little bit. But I will cover the recipes really briefly. At least a couple of them, and then you guys can look the rest of them up yourself if you want to. So the first block we're going to look at is called the ME controller. And you see here it says it's online. It tells you how much energy it's using. I don't know the exact conversion for this, but it uses a pretty decent amount of energy. I had a redstone cell hooked up to it, and it was draining it fairly quickly. You notice below it, it tells us all the things that are currently attached to the network, and I'll get into that a little bit more in just a minute. But I do want to make it clear that this block, the ME controller, does require power. It requires power, and the ME chest requires power. So keep those two things in mind. Those two blocks do require they be hooked up to some kind of a power source. So the ME controller is made with an advanced processor, which I showed you a second ago, 4 quartz and 4 irons. And by itself, while it does have an interface, this block does not do a whole lot other than allow the rest of your network to function. It does do one other thing, which I'll get into in just a little bit. The next thing you'll see here is that I have a wire connecting these boxes. And that wire is very simply called ME cable. And where did my ME cable go? It's missing. ME cable, and it comes in, oh, I put it right down there. Okay, so ME cable is for lack of a better term, the data and item processing connections for this mod. And the reason I say that is because unlike your traditional crafting mods that move actual items around in pipes, the ME in this mod stands for matter energy. And what happens here is this mod takes items, converts them to data, and then allows you to do things with that data. So this cable carries that data between all the devices. And you'll notice that I didn't necessarily run like a whole line of the cable with each machine touching it. I was able to run the cable from machine to machine. So each machine or block in this mod carries all the data all the way through it, so you can connect it in the fashion that I have here, or you can make a little bit more wasteful circuits if you like how that stuff looks. So the core of this whole system is how we get items into and out of the system, and I'm going to show you that right now. This block is called an Emmy chest, and you notice I have some items in it already. The recipe for the Emmy chest is one of those conversion matrix which I showed you earlier, 2 glass and some iron and a chest in the middle, okay? And you'll also notice that at the top of this interface there's a little guy here called in this case, a 1K storage. And there's a couple of different storage modules, okay? Depending on how much you want to spend on them. The 1K is the basic, then there's a 4K, a 16K, and a 64K, and each one of those determines how many of each item it can hold. So this holds 1,000 items, this holds 4,000, 16, and 64,000. You notice each one can also hold up to 63 types. I'm sorry, 64 types, 0 through 63. And what's going to happen here is just as you're advancing up the tech tree, each one of these is just a little bit more expensive than the last. So the basic storage unit requires redstone, iron, glass, and one of these storage cells. And the storage cells are made real simply with the basic processor, quartz, and redstone. And as we advance up the tech tree, you'll see the 4,000 one uses a storage segment, which is an upgrade from the storage cell. The 16,000 unit one requires a storage block, which is an upgrade from the storage segment. And finally, the 64,000 item one requires a storage cluster, which is an upgrade from the storage block. And they get pretty expensive. So, you know, there's a little bit of balance as far as the price per storage, per storing item in this mod. So what happens here is I craft a storage cell and I place it into my chest. And then I can begin filling the chest with items. You'll see here I've got some sand and some sticks and some iron and some dirt in there. I'm going to throw some glass in there. And all those items are now saved as data inside this cell. So I can grab the cell out if I want to. And notice that this empties out. There's nothing in the chest now. Okay, I can place it back in there. And once I have one of these cells in my inventory, I can then go to this next block, which is called an Emmy drive. And the drive allows you to store up to 10 cells. So, you know, this drive could have anywhere from from 1,000 to 10,000 all the way up to 160,000 items in it if you were to use, I'm sorry, 640,000 items in it if you were to use the 64K cells and fill the whole thing up. So you can have a ton of storage via the data system that this mod uses in just this drive. The recipe for the drive is 2 of the basic processors, a chest, and some glass and iron and stuff. And you'll notice there's a UI on the front, so the more cells you add to it, the more little lights come on the front. So kind of cool. I'm going to leave this one in here for now because there's some interaction with the rest of the machines that require the chest that we're going to look at in just a little bit. So the next block we're going to look at here is called the Emmy terminal. And the Emmy terminal essentially allows you to access all of your items at once. What you'll see here is it has a search bar. It has the ability to sort by name, number, priority, and reverse the direction if you want to. And you'll notice there's another tab here that says the view. And there's 2 views here. There's stored items, craftable, or both. And I'm going to leave it on stored items for just a minute here because I haven't really gotten into the crafting part yet, but we'll come back to that. So you see here it shows dirt, glass, iron, sand, and a stick. And that's because those are all the items I have in that cell. If we were to switch the cell with this one, you would notice that first of all, hovering over it tells me there's nothing in it, and then when I put it in the chest, it also shows me that there's nothing in it. But that doesn't change what's in my system. You see that? Regardless of where the cells are in my system, I still have all the same items in there, okay? All right, so the next block is kind of like a combination of the previous block and the crafting table. Did we look at the terminal? No, we didn't. So the Emmy terminal is made with a conversion matrix, a cable, and some iron and glass. The next block we're going to look at is very similar to the access terminal, except it's called a crafting terminal. You see up here it says MEC terminal, and you'll notice a couple things about this. The first thing that you'll see is that it has a crafting grid. And what makes this really, really, really cool is that you can take items, right out of your storage system, okay? And let's say I put a recipe in here for a pickaxe. Notice here I have 55 iron and 58 sticks in my storage system. And in this case, it's actually using items right out of my actual inventory. I don't know if you can see it in the background too. Do you guys see the little blue flash on my cable there as I'm taking items in and out? So it just shows you data moving around it. But notice I have 55 and 58. And what happens is if I go ahead and make this pickaxe, it will automatically refill my crafting table from my existing inventory. And one of the things that's really, really neat about the applied energistics model of this is that it can also use non-stacking items. So let's see, what's a good recipe that uses a non-stacking item? There's a couple recipes that use pickaxes, right? I don't know. I don't really want to get into it too far then because I didn't have it set up. But if you were to have a non-stacking item in your inventory system somewhere, it would, without fail, be able to use that item in a recipe and auto refill it. You notice here, I'm going to go ahead and make, another one of these. Bam. And I can just throw it in there and look inside because it uses data and not actual stacks, they do stack inside the applied energistics system. Just amazing stuff. I mean, how no one else has managed to handle the problem with non-stacking items in the past is incredible. And notice it doesn't matter where I put them in here, they'll automatically go into their data and automatically stack the right way. All right. So now that we have all of our materials in this system, we want to figure out how can we automatically craft stuff. Well, the answer is very simple. The first block we're going to need is this thing here called an Emmy pattern encoder. And or is a pattern encoder. And that's not a complicated recipe either. Crafting table, you see again this conversion matrix. That item's in a lot of recipes. And what we do is we build our block, and then we need to build what's called a blank pattern. And the blank patterns are made with glowstone, iron, quartz, and glass. And that gives us a single blank pattern. Once we have our blank pattern, we can come over into our, let's teach it a new recipe. So we're going to teach it how to make a stone pickaxe. So once I have my recipe in the crafting grid, I grab a blank pattern, I drop it in there, I click encode. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but these most of these blocks do not use your items. They use ghost items, kind of like how the project tables do in Red Power and some other mods. So once I click encode, I can grab my assembler pattern, I can pull it out of there, and it'll tell you it crafts one stone pickaxe and uses cobblestone and sticks. Very cool, right? Next, I have to build a processing or crafting facility. And I'm going to show you right now how to do that. The auto crafting system in this mod is really neat, but it does require some blocks. It requires at least one of the, where'd it go? Where's my CPU at? All right, it requires at least a crafting CPU, okay, along with a combination of, what is going on here? Oh yeah, I put them over here. Along with a combination of containment walls, pattern providers, and heat vents. So let's look at these recipes real quick. The crafting CPU is made with one of the advanced processors, iron ingots, glowstone, and an advanced processor. And I will tell you the crafting CPU is technically optional. I'll show you what I mean by that in just a minute. The containment walls are made with iron, gold, and quartz. The pattern provider, now this is not optional. You must have at least one pattern provider in each one of your auto crafting stations. It's made with 2 the conversion matrix and advanced processor. Remember the storage cell was based off of the basic processor and some of these other recipes, some of these other items. We saw these earlier for the actual storage items that we built. And then the heat vent is made with iron bars, one of the ME cables, and iron ingots. So what do we do with these? Like I said, the multi-block structure requires at least containment walls, pattern providers, and heat vents. And they're actually built very similarly to like railcraft iron tanks. So I'm going to use this assembly containment wall. And for this one, I'm just going to build a 3x3. 3x3 is the minimum size for this multi-block structure. And then it has a couple other requirements. All of the outer facing walls must be heat vents. Okay, so I've got one wall left here. Remember I said the CPU was optional? Well, the middle, any of the hollow middle of these must be filled with either pattern providers or CPUs. Okay, either one of the two, but you may not have any air blocks in the middle of these multi-blocks. So for this one, I'm just going to toss a pattern provider in there, and then I'm going to toss my last heat vent on here. And ta-da, we've got a assembler chamber, a molecular assembler chamber. And you'll notice there's a little UI for it here, and I've got some buttons here at the top for next and previous, and I've got a pretty big open grid here. So what you do is once you build your assembler chamber, you grab your encoded assembler pattern that we just made a minute ago, and we drop it in there. And that's it. Now, when I come back over to my crafting terminal or my access terminal, they both work the same way. I'm going to switch this interface over to craftable items, and there it is, my stone pickaxe. And you notice it shows craft on the bottom of it here. Whereas if I have items stored, it'll show me the number below them. If I don't have any left, it'll show me just craft on there. And for example, you know, I've got 3 iron pickaxe in the system, but if I wanted to make some more, I can go over to craftable only here and build them again. So it won't take items out of my storage. It'll build fresh new ones for me. And you'll notice that this has a ton of space in it. So this particular assembler chamber can hold what, like what is that, 9x6? So like a 9x6 grid of these encoded assembler patterns. Now over here you'll see I built a big one. So this is a 5x5. And I believe they can be 7x7 if you want them to be. But in this one I did it a little bit different. You'll notice that I have a next and a previous page here because on this one I used 2 providers. 2 of the pattern providers. And then in the rest of the internals of this, I put the CPU add-ons. And what the CPU add-ons do is make these machines craft faster. So there is a little bit of a time restraint with these things. They take time to craft items for you. And the more complicated the item is, I've noticed it takes a little bit longer to craft, but the CPU upgrades make them craft significantly faster. They add 3 operations per tick, I think. So when you have really big projects, a larger assembler chamber will definitely make it run faster for you. So once you've taught your system, you can come over here and you can tell it to craft things. Let's go look at my inventory here real quick. So I've got 54 sticks and 49 iron in here. So let's say I wanted to go ahead and craft up, I don't know, and craft up 10 of the iron pickaxes. Okay, so I can click begin, and you'll notice that they immediately got built. And that's because my crafter has so many CPU upgrades in it that it was able to make them almost instantly. And you'll notice my resources went down. I used some of my iron and some of my sticks. The next block I have sitting here is called a crafting monitor. And what the crafting monitor lets you do is if you're ordering a big batch of stuff, like see I have 19 iron left here. Let's say I wanted to make 7 more pickaxes. If I hit begin, you'll notice that it didn't make them all for me, right? Because I don't have the right materials. Well, my crafting monitor is going to let you know all the items that are currently crafted. It'll tell you it's trying to craft a pickaxe and it's missing an iron ingot. So if I want to cancel a job or cancel a sub job, like let's say if there's multiple steps for making these items, I can simply hold down left shift. I can click, and shift clicking the item will pull it out of the process and cancel it. There is a looks like there's a little bit of a bug there. When I just did it, it crashed my world, but it was working on the previous test version, so I'll have to see exactly what's going on with that, but no big deal. So the crafting monitor allows you to see what's going on in your system and cancel it if you want to. Part of the issue, of course, with this crafting system is that you may want to have it interact with things outside of basic combining of components. And that's where this next item that you see here is involved. This guy's called the Emmy Interface. And you'll notice I've got another one of these little encoded assembler patterns in it. And you see I have it taught to make one glass out of one sand. And this is where another area where this mod is very powerful, because it does not check to make sure what you're telling it is correct. If you wanted to, say, hook this up to a macerator, okay, you can come down here and I can grab one of my blank patterns and I can let it know that if I put cobblestone into a machine, it's going to give me sand. And once I encode that, it will now put cobblestone into a machine and expect to get sand out. Well, how does that work? Oops. Let me show you. So you see here I have the assembler pattern in the machine under processing. And this interface actually has a couple more functions to it. It can import and export items from the physical world into your data system here. So there's some more advanced uses to this that I'm not going to cover right now. But you'll notice I have it hooked here to a TE powered furnace. And in this case I have the powered furnace outputting to the back. This mod does seem to have a little bit of an issue pulling things out of some of these auto ejecting blocks, but I don't know what the status of that is right now. But you'll notice I put a buffer chest on here. So I've got the Emmy interface kicking items out of the system, and then I have another device here called, oops, I have another device here. What's going on here? There we go. Called an import bus. And the import bus is designed to take items from outside the system and import them back into our Emmy system. And it has a couple different modes here. It has always active, active without a signal, active when a signal is on, or once per pulse. You'll also notice it can move individual or stacks of items. So right now I have it on always active and move single items. So again, I've got the assembler pattern here that's designed to make glass out of sand. All right, and it connects to this powered furnace. So now when I come over here to my terminal, let's say I want to come to craftable items and I want to craft a glass. So I'm going to click, let's do two. So I click begin. It's going to kick the sand out to my furnace. My furnace is going to automatically smelt them. When they're smelted, they're going to land in this chest. We may not even be able to see it. It's going to happen really fast. Yeah, when they're done smelting, they land in the chest. And then the bus system, which I'm having a really hard time clicking on this block for some reason. The bus system automatically pulls them out and spits them back into my network. So there's 20 glass in here. I'm going to pull it all out for now. Let's order another 10. And what you'll see is, as the system operates, my glass in my system begins to fill up. Just like that. Cool, right? You can also use external inventories from other mods or other chests, like an ender chest or an iron chest or whatever, and using this really cool item called a storage bus, okay, we can connect external inventories into our applied Energistics system. So now when I come over here, you're going to see I now have 64 diamonds available to my network. Essentially, everything has been covered here. There is a way to import external inventories, there's a way to use external machines, and finally, you'll see here, this is called an export bus, and it does the exact opposite of the import bus. You give it a filter, you set it in a mode, and in this case I have one per pulse, and in this case I have it moving single items. And here's an empty inventory, and I'm going to give it a redstone pulse. Ta-da! I've got glass here. Now what I could do if I wanted to, let's say I had a machine that was running off glass constantly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the glass out of this system. Oops. Okay. And I'm going to go switch the mode on this guy over to always active. Okay, and you see it's still processing glass. And now what's going to happen here is when I request glass, it's going to kick the sand over here to the powered furnace. Okay, but then when the item gets kicked back into my network, it's going to realize that it has a valid output destination that's always continually pushing items, and it's going to push out glass as fast as it can. Now, if I were to put more glass into my inventory system, look, it automatically empties it back out. And all that glass is going to end up back over here because I have a filter and I have it set to always on. And you can control it with redstone. You can have it the same as the others. You can have it when it, in a null state or in a not state. You can have it in an active state, a once per pulse, or always. And it'll push out any items you put in the filter. So if I were to put sand in this filter too, it's going to start kicking all my sand out. Very cool, right? All right. A couple more blocks I want to show you. This guy over here is a pretty new block to this mod, and it is called a storage monitor. And the way the storage monitor works is when you take an item in your inventory, I don't know what just happened to my inventory, that was weird, and you right click it, much like a barrel, for example, it will show you how many of those items are in your network. So I could switch over to sand here, to cobble. I could have it tell me how many advanced processors were in my inventory system. And it has one other really cool function. If I were to take my wrench, by the way, this wrench rotates these things. So you see this? I can rotate the direction that these buses face, for example. Pretty easy stuff, right? All right. If I take my wrench, let's put this back on sand. If I switch this to sand, and I take my wrench and I shift right click, you'll notice it says it's now locked. And what that means is that I can no longer adjust what's showing on there. So that makes it permanent. And then, if you use one of these conversion matrices, you can shift right click it and notice I get these little white dots. And what those dots are letting me know is that I can now pull this item out of this block. So if I right click it, it's going to pull them out, and it pulls them out a stack at a time. Oops. So what you end up here is a really neat kind of visual storage system that also doubles and lets you pull items out of the system if you want to, a stack at a time. I have a couple last things to show you guys. The first is kind of a network cutoff block. This block is called a dark cable, and it's made with a lever and some of the other cables and stuff. And what happens is when you apply a redstone signal to it, you notice it turns this section of cable dark, and that will cut that area of the network off from the rest. I do want to give you guys a warning from the mod maker. Whenever you cut these networks off, it does reboot the controller, which means that if you have like crafting going on or items flowing through the system, that'll all reset. You'll lose all that information. Okay. This block is actually really neat for automated crafting or interacting with other mods. It's called the I/O port, and the way it works is you take a storage unit and you put it in there. Okay. Well, I have it set on the wrong mode here, but you see there's a transfer direction here. Okay. So I can either have it transferring from a storage cell to my network, or from my network to the storage cell by clicking this little arrow. So what's going to happen here is if I take my storage cell, I throw it in there, it now dumped the entire contents of my network to this storage cell. Okay. I can dump it all back in the network. You notice it's back to empty here. And that's probably a little bit too broad as far as how you would want to handle this type of thing, which is where this next block comes in. This is called the pre-formatter. And what you can do is you can take your storage cell, you can put it up there in the top of the box. I'm going to name this one sand, and then you can give it a filter. So I'm going to give it a filter. I'm going to click the format button. You'll notice now it shows sand up there in the description of the item. And now when I take it and I put it over into my I/O port, Oops, let's get this switched around. Now all it does is pull the sand out. So it pulled 10 items of one type. So we know that this has 10 sand in it now. You can use this with some automatic systems. The top and bottom of this box block are inputs and the sides are outputs. So you can push the cells into and out of this if you want to. Do you remember earlier when I said that this controller had one other function? I'm going to show you what that is right now. There's a device called a wireless access terminal, and it's made with an access terminal and a wireless receiver, and the wireless receiver is made with an interpearl. Oh, and there's a quartz fiber option, and that involves this quartz dust and glass. But you can take this wireless access terminal, drop it in your controller, and you'll notice now it says it's linked. The next thing you have to do is somewhere on your network you've got to have one of these wireless access points. And the wireless access point is constructed with another one of those wireless receivers and some glass and an Emmy cable, and you drop it somewhere on your network, and it has a pretty short range to start with. It only has a 16 block range, but it has an upgrade. You can put wireless boosters in it. The boosters are made with iron and redstone and quartz, and each booster adds 1 block of range. So currently my range on this guy would be 17 blocks. And what you can do is wirelessly access your network. How cool is that? The range on those, I don't know if there's an upper limit on it. I haven't really played with them much, but you know, it gives you a little bit more balanced solution than maybe the remote orderers, which I love, but are probably a little OP from logistics pipes. Essentially, with that type of access, maybe you can just use it to access your network anywhere in your base, or to craft items for you. Very, very, very powerful, very useful, and really cool and neat looking system, I think. You can run multiple Applied Energistics networks side by side. There are different colors of cables, so if you wanted to, you could run a second system that did not connect with your primary system. That allows you to have several different things going on, all in a more compact space. And there's a ton of colors of these things. You see, I've been using the blue ones, but there's black, white, brown, yellow, red, green, and then there's just the basic cable too. So really a neat mod with a lot of flexibility. I think he's still calling it a beta phase. I know, like the item monitor block I showed you just got developed today, but a really neat and powerful system that I would not be surprised to see popping up on a lot of servers here in the near future. Thanks so much for watching. This is Wylker, and this was Applied Energistics. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave comments or feedback, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.